investigation, solving mysteries in the night. She's the shadows, finding answers, shining bright light. No one's left behind in the darkness, all alone. With a heart like a siren, she brings the lost ones home. Silent cries in the dark no longer have to be, for justice wheels keep turning, Granny on the beat. Broken voices find their power, call out hope again. When Granny's crime busters run, no victims left in vain. Bravery in her veins, truth she won't disguise. With a fire in her eyes, she's got nothing to deny. Granny fights for justice, never backs down from the call. For the voiceless and the missing, she'll stand tall. In a world full of shadows, she fights the unseen, a guardian of the truth in this wicked dream. And every story told brings her back to life. Granny's on the case, cutting through the lies. She guards the broken-hearted from a world that hides. With unwavering spirit, she wears no disguise. Searching for the lost pieces of a shattered life. Granny brings the dawn after a longest night. Oh.
Hello, everybody. Got this coughing jug just as it showed me coming on. Okay, take a quick sip. All right, so how's everybody doing tonight? Hello, Ginger. Hello, Brenda Joe. Everybody else who is in the background there. All right, well, what a day for court today. Oh my gosh, guys. I thought yesterday was explosive. Today was, I don't know what today was. Hello, K9. Goodness. All right. So Zach was on the stand today, and we're going to kind of go through. Excuse me. So the first and only witness today was Zach. We're not going to show. Oh my goodness. We are not going to show all of the stream. We're going to show some of it tonight. He started out this morning talking about his family, kind of his life, how he went to Juilliard and graduated and decided not to go further. He wanted to just get some experience under his belt. Then they talked about his family, and he was saying that he did adopt the 5 Russian siblings. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here. So they did adopt 5 Russian siblings. The oldest one was there was 3 girls and 2 boys, I believe he said. And the oldest girl was 10 years old. And I guess when you adopt siblings, you can change their names at the time of the adoption. And they changed her name to Grace. I don't remember what her name was. It started with an A, I think. But he started talking about how Grace was evil, referenced her to a vampire, like having a shark stare. I mean, it was really, really strange, guys. He fully explained her as if she was like a psychopath at 10 years old. Okay. And then he tried to say that he inferred that Christina is kind of the same way. Said when John Mello was talking to him about Christina, John Mello had not known what he had gone through with Grace, and John Mello was saying the exact same things about Christina that he had gone through with Grace. He also mentioned, and I don't know, I can't remember if this was before lunch or after, but he mentioned that John Mello offered him $5,000 to Red Rum Christina, and he said no, I would never do that. And then John offered him $10,000 to do that, and he said no. And I'm offended that you would even ask that, because if I was going to do something like that, it would be because I felt there was no other choice but to do it, kind of deal. So what we're going to do is go and listen to some of his testimony. And guys, I want you to watch him. Tell me what your thoughts are of him. Okay? I want to honestly know. I'm not going to say anything about my thoughts while he's on the stand. I just want to know what your thoughts are. Okay? Now, this morning he did try to bring in the fact that something about, I think that's how I was going to try to bring it in, something about Grace and having been essayed as a child or something. And I think that's how I was going to try to bring it in the back door. But the state objected. And so when they came back, I'm going to let you hear what the judge had to say, and then hear part of Zach's testimony. Hello, Juicy and Cheryl. Good to see you guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I stated at the outset of this trial, I am the sole judge of the law in the case, while you, the jury, sit as the judge of the facts. And part of my role is to make determinations about what evidence can and cannot be admitted and presented to you, the jury. The gatekeeping role rests solely with me, the judge on the law, and I want to instruct you that you're not to consider any testimony that I have instructed you to disregard. Furthermore, you should not even mention or discuss any testimony that I've instructed you to disregard, and I instruct you not to discuss any topics that have been ruled improper when you go to do your deliberation room, okay?
They can't even talk about it.
Please continue, Mr. Mormon. Will incorporate.
Zach, before we broke for lunch, we were in the time period of end of September, beginning of October of 2021. You remember that?
Yes.
And Zach, you testified before lunch about 2 offers John had made you to to kill Christina Parcells. Do you remember that?
I remember.
And do you remember, after the second offer, telling John something to the effect of, you would never do that for money, you would only do that if you believed it was necessary to rescue Aida?
And if I believed there was no other way.
At the end of September, beginning of October 2021, did you conclude that you had to rescue Aida and there was no other way?
Yes, I did.
Let's talk about what's happening in your life in the beginning of October 2021. And specifically, I want to talk about the status of the music project you had been engaged with Tom Strange in the Seagull Museum. I also want to talk about other employment opportunities. So tell the jury what was going on in your life on that front at the beginning of October.
At the beginning of October, I was just coming off finishing the project at the museum. We finished in September at some point. And as I mentioned before, my birthday is October 2nd. So I had arranged to play a private home recital at the Wynn's home, where I would play the last three piano sonatas of Beethoven on my birthday. So these are very, very difficult pieces of music, and some of the greatest pieces of music ever written. So I was very preoccupied trying to give my best to these pieces. And shortly after that, a friend of mine reached out who had done some work performing on cruise ships. There's an organization called Lincoln Center Stage that recruits conservatory-trained musicians to form either a piano quartet or a piano quintet to play classical concerts on cruise ships. And they had had a pianist drop out at the last minute, and long story short, I interviewed for this job and got this job, I think on October 12th, but it was about that time, maybe a little earlier.
Where were the winds on October 12th and 13th?
They were in Europe.
And ultimately, did you take
Hello, Melissa.
Christina Parcells' life on October the 13th?
Yes, because I believed it was absolutely necessary to save Aida, and I was right.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
That was a legal conclusion.
Disregard the testimony that you just heard.
I believed it was absolutely necessary, and I was right. Just, listen to this and think about how angry that judge must have been by the end of the day. Not just frustrated, Ginger Girl. I think he was, and they don't want to call a mistrial, right? I mean, who wants to go through this trial again? I don't.
I want to talk about the timing. You've alluded to it a little bit, but I want to be more specific. October the 13th, describe for the jury why you felt that was the time, why you believed it, or why it was necessary to do it on October the 13th, specifically, or in this period of time.
I had been wrestling with this since June, as I previously stated, since the end of June, I believed Aida was in complete and grave danger every moment of her life that she was living with her mother. And the other things that I had tried to do to save her from that were not working. So I was having this incredible wrestling match within myself for these months, feeling that I needed to do something to save her, and yet feeling this incredible reluctance to do the one thing that I knew would save her because of how terrible I knew it would be to do it, even though I believed it would be right. So by the time October 13th rolled around, I had been grappling with this for a long time, and I was experiencing a tremendous amount of guilt that I had waited as long as I did, because I should have acted sooner, and I didn't do that. So I had come to the realization that I had gotten this offer to go on this cruise ship, and I would have been leaving the country for a long time. Essentially, it was now or never. I had an opportunity to save her from a danger that I knew she was in, and that I knew was not going to cease. And I just couldn't go on with my life and leave her to drown. I mean, I had a great life. I had everything. I made money doing what I loved. I was going to be going to the South Pacific to play concerts for rich people on cruise ships. I mean, but how could I go and enjoy that and know that I was leaving a kid to her fate, a kid who thought that I was her friend? I would never have been able to look at myself in the mirror again if I had done that.
But he can look himself in the mirror after taking her mother's life. After taking a life, any life, doesn't matter. And the way he was talking about his old life, past tense, he was talking about it like he knows his life is over, right? But I agree. I agree that he feels he was right, with what Ginger said, because of the evidence that they found. He knew about what evidence they found with Bradley Post. His lawyers must have kept him apprised of that information. So, but really what I want from you guys is to watch his demeanor and tell me what you think. And I will say this, when he goes into detail about how he did what he did, when I was watching this earlier today, I was riveted to his story. And I believe he told the absolute truth. I don't believe there was any part of a lie in what he was saying. It was really eerie to me, but let me know what you think.
So, specific to October 13th, I believed that there would be a period of time at the house when Christina Parcell would be alone. And I wanted to make sure that absolutely no one was there. Not Aida, not Lutina, not Brad Post. Because again, this was not about revenge or retribution or anything. I wasn't angry. The only thing I was feeling that day was pity. And I wanted to make sure that no bystander or no one else would be involved in this, which could have happened if someone else was there.
Zach, let's talk about that. So once you concluded, believed absolutely this was what you had to do, did you go about planning?
Yes, I planned very carefully to make sure, one, like I said, that no one else would be involved in this. And two, I knew that if I tried to do this and failed, it would only be worse for Aida.
And consistent with the court's instructions, why did you believe it'd be worse for Aida?
Because I believed that if I was discovered doing this, it would connect me to John Mello. And I believed, and I still believe, that he's a great father and he is Aida's best shot at having a happy and safe childhood.
Let's talk about the planning. Did you get a gun?
Yes.
At the time, were you also carrying your own firearm?
Yes, I had a concealed weapons permit at the time, so I generally would always be carrying a 9mm concealed weapon on my person for personal protection.
Did you get another firearm for this?
Yes, I did.
What type of firearm did you get?
It was a .22 caliber revolver
Where did you get it?
at a gun show.
Where was the gun show?
It was here in Greenville.
How long before October 13th did you get the .22?
Maybe a month or month and a half earlier.
Did you also
So he went to buy that gun. He was already planning premeditation. Wow. And he's being very honest, right? I don't think that he's, yeah. He's making a straight up premeditation confession. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, and as he gets into more of this, guys, it amazes me how truthful he is. It blows my mind. And you can tell me what you think, but there's no doubt in my mind that he was being truthful as he was talking about this red rum.
get a knife?
Yes, I did.
Where did you get the knife?
At the gun show.
At about the same time?
It was the same day.
Let's talk about what else, what other planning you did.
Ordered flowers.
Did you obtain gloves?
Yes, I did.
Remember where you got the gloves?
No, I don't.
Did you obtain any chemicals?
Yes, I bought some paint thinner because, again, I didn't want to be connected to this because I wanted to make sure this would actually do something to save Aida.
You know,
So in case a glove had broken or I had left a fingerprint or something, I wanted to be able to clean it with the paint thinner.
There is the reason, guys, why there was only one fingernail that had his DNA because of the paint thinner that he bought.
Is that a thing? Is that on the murder aisle?
Zach, let's talk about your bike and what you did to become familiar with the area of Cane Break leading up to October the 13th.
I had looked at a route I would be able to take from the mountain house that I was staying at on back roads to avoid traffic cameras. So maybe a few days beforehand, I looked at Google Maps and I figured out how this route would lead.
Let's talk about October the 12th. Did you originally plan to do this on October the 12th?
Yes.
Zach, consistent with the court's instructions, describe to the jury why you didn't do it on October the 12th.
I woke up that day and I just felt such reluctance, and something in my gut told me it wasn't the right day. And I waited one more day.
Let's go to October the 13th. You testified earlier that you wanted to plan in part to prevent or minimize danger to others. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Did you have information about where people would be on October the 13th?
To a degree, yes.
Oh, yeah.
How did you get that information?
From John Mello.
What did he tell you?
He told me when Aida would be at school, and he told me that he believed Christina had a job interview at some point that morning.
So, that was not good testimony. He already said that John Mello asked him to red rum Christina for $5,000 and then $10,000, right? Now, so John knew evidently what day he was going to do this because he told him where everyone would be on that day. And yes, Ginger, your questions got answered, didn't they? But he does get into the DNA and the roses. I think he knows he doesn't have a defense. But I think he's hoping for a hung jury. And you'll see why. I won't go into it. I won't spoil it for you. But what I did want to say quickly is that after this testimony, or during this testimony, you make sure you can see this. A second man was arrested. The Greenville County Sheriff's Office said another man has been arrested in connection to the red rum of Christina Parcell, based on the open court testimony during the active trial of Zachary Hughes, along with existing evidence. Warrants for the arrest of 64-year-old John Joey Mello were issued. At around 1:30 p.m., members of the Greenville County Sheriff's Office Fugitive Apprehension Specialized Investigation Team. Wow, that is a long... Guys, that is huge. Greenville County Sheriff's Office Fugitive Apprehension Specialized Investigation Teams arrested Mello at his home located on Blake Street. He is facing charges of accessory before the fact to felony and solicitation to commit a felony. And his hearing is at 9 o'clock tonight. And I think Gigi from, I can never remember the name. Ginger, do you remember the name of her thing, of her channel? Pretty Lies and Alibis, I think. Something like that. So, because of what Zachary Hughes just said on the stand, they went right away. I mean, he wasn't even done testifying at 1:30. They went and arrested John Mello. So the bad part about that, though, guys, is that what was I going to say? I started reading chat. Yes, that's his lawyer. Yeah, they were really pushing, I think, for a mistrial today because he kept violating the judge's orders. Absolutely. Yes, his exam is tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. I think that's 9:30 our time. Pretty lies and alibis. Yes. Thank you, Melissa. So I found that it was really funny because I was thinking, oh, they're gonna go nab him quick. I'm thinking that in my head. They're gonna go nab John Mello because they've got it now, right? And sure enough, they did. It, and I was like, wow. So, she will probably let everybody know on Twitter tonight. I don't know. So I think that's Eastern time, 9:00. I think it'd be 8:00 here, Central time. So, yeah, the cross should be really good. But his testimony was interesting, guys.
So let's talk about that morning. The evening of October the 12th, where did you spend the night?
At the Mountain House.
You woke up on the morning of October 13th and you left the Mountain House, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Do you remember approximately when you left the Mountain House?
It was much later than I meant to. I think it was about 8 or 8:15 in the morning.
Oh, he meant to go earlier, evidently.
When you left the Mountain House, in which vehicle did you leave?
In my Ford Ranger.
What was in the back of the Ford Ranger?
My bike.
That bike right there?
Yes.
And just for the clarity of the record,
Can you demonstrate writing it for us?
this is a state's exhibit. I don't have the number that was introduced.
Defense attorney parks the bike in front of the juries.
What else did you put in your pickup truck in addition to the bike?
Sword.
I brought the gloves and I put this in a backpack. I brought the paint thinner and the gun I described, the .22. I brought a knife and I brought a box that was made to look like a gift wrapped box and a bunch of roses that I had bought the day before.
Day old roses.
Talk about the roses in a minute. When you left the Mountain House, where did you go?
I drove to a road that runs parallel, very close to Canebrake.
When you got to that location, well, before we go further, describe for this jury the ride in your truck from the Mountain House to this location, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what was going through your mind.
Like I said, I had wrestled with this for months. I had come to the point where rationally I knew that the only way Aida was going to be saved from what she was enduring was for me to take this route. I knew that. But there's another element, a human element, which is just so reluctant and revulsed by the idea of taking a human life. So I had prayed a great deal about this. I had prayed like I'd never prayed before, because even knowing that logically this was the right thing to do, it didn't satisfy that emotional and human aspect where I felt that I needed permission to do this. And I was so terrified that somehow I might be doing the wrong thing. Like, I knew that it was right logically, but there's the emotional aspect was just reeling against this idea. And more so because she was a woman. I was raised to always protect my sisters and mother, and I opened doors for women growing up. So this idea was just repugnant to me, even though I believed it was necessary to save a child. So on that morning, I prayed earlier, a few days earlier, and I had felt that this was the right thing to do.
That irritates me so much. I'm just going to go out on a limb here, guys, and say that I don't believe God would impress it upon his heart that it was the right thing to do. I don't believe God ever condones murder. I just don't. Okay. So him putting this on his faith, you have to wonder what God he serves, because not the same God I serve, that's for sure. K9. Well, he says something a little bit later and it's kind of funny, but I'll let him say it. So petals do fly off. Yeah. He gave her the roses, guys. I wasn't too far off there. Yes, K9 Gigi is awesome. Yes, and she was in the courtroom giving updates on her ex account. It was the judge made the televised court be 20 minutes behind actual court, so they couldn't, so we were always watching everything 20 minutes behind. So if you went over to X, you could see Gigi's, texts or tweets, whatever they call them, so that you could kind of know what was going on, right? But yeah, he's just telling the whole thing here. Let's continue on.
No matter how terrible and difficult it was going to be. So like I said, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity, because I realized that this was just the only way to save a child. And it felt like a foregone conclusion, because I knew that I had a duty to do this to save a child. So,
okay, so his sniffing there, if you look at him, there's no tears falling, guys. So don't fall for that, okay? Do I think he's being honest? Yes. Unbelievably so. I do think he's being honest. I think he's also wanting us to feel sorry for him, or the jury to feel sorry for him.
physically driving my truck there, I was experiencing a level of anxiety and physical illness that I had just never experienced
Ginger.
due to stress before. My hands were shaking. I was in a cold sweat, and I was fighting the urge to vomit before I even got close there.
Oh,
a
you
few
poor
times I thought I
thing.
was going to have to pull off to the side of the road, because I could hardly keep my truck straight. My hands were shaking so badly. But the whole time I was just thinking, if I don't do this, if I turn back, then I'm consigning Aida to her fate. when I know that I could have done something to stop what was happening. So I just tried to take my mind off of it, and I tried to just go and drive a little bit farther and a little bit farther and not think about what I was going to have to do when I got there. And when I finally got to the point where I parked my truck, this feeling only increased. I knew the plan, but I was having so much difficulty going through with it. So I took my bike out of the truck, and I had a mask on and clothing that's been described already. And I just tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other on my bike. And it felt like some runs or rucks I had been on where all I could do was focus on putting one foot in front of the other because it was so difficult to keep going. And I just kept seeing Aida's face and reminding myself that if I don't do this, no one's going to come to save her. And I kept.
Guys, are you getting a weird feeling about his thoughts around Aida? I'm not going to speculate. I don't want you to put it in the thing, but you can just say yes or no. I'm getting a really weird vibe about his relationship with this little girl. I don't know. Just saying.
Pedaling, and eventually I arrived in front of 122 Canebrake.
Zach, we're going to talk about what happened when you got to 122 Canebrake in just a second. You described
That was a
having a
slip.
gun and having a knife. Initially, were you going to use the gun?
Yes.
Did you ultimately decide to use the gun?
No.
Why not?
I was very concerned about using a gun because of how loud it would be. And I didn't want to alert a neighbor or a bystander who might come to investigate and get involved.
Get caught.
So I tried to suppress the gun by making a makeshift suppressor. And in movies, these things are made out to be like it's very easy, and a suppressed gun is just very silent, and that's not the case.
You tried.
So ultimately, I test fired the gun,
You tried it.
and I had bought some subsonic ammunition, which is supposed to be quieter, but I didn't realize that on a revolver, a suppressor doesn't work because the end of the cylinder is open. And I realized just a day or two beforehand that I couldn't use a gun because it could potentially involve someone else in this if someone heard a gunshot and came to investigate.
If you had had a choice, would you have rather used a gun?
I would have rather not to have had to have done it at all, but if I had to, yes, I would have chosen a gun.
Why is that?
Yes, I think God complex, hero complex, something, because he thinks he is her savior. Right? I mean, he was really trying very hard not to get caught. I'll give him that. I mean, he was thinking of everything. He didn't want anybody to hear it and come so that he'd have to deal with two people now, or, the police or anything. So, I mean, he was really thinking hard about what could happen, right? So he was trying to, pay attention to every detail, which, in my opinion, I think he's very, has a very high intellect. But here's the thing. He's talking about this stuff. He is sniffing, but there's no tears coming out. But has his face changed at all, guys? His face hasn't changed since he walked into trial the first day, 6 days ago.
Because it would have been quicker and more humane.
Oh man, we're getting there.
I agree, K9.
Let's talk about, you arrive at the house, and 122 came rang. Do you remember about what time you arrived there?
I think it was a little after 9 in the morning.
And you arrived there on your bike. Is that it?
Yes,
And you testified about this a little bit, but tell the jury what you're wearing.
I had on black pants and a black thermal and a gray shirt over that. I had on a black beanie and a white medical mask, and I had on black gloves and a black backpack.
Was there a hoodie?
Exactly what he was seen in on the bike.
Do you remember how many vehicles were parked in the driveway when you got there?
One.
When you arrived at the house and you got off your bike, what did you do?
I laid my bike down in the driveway and I took my backpack off and I took out the box that had been gift wrapped that had an end open. And I put the .22 revolver in that box. And I put the backpack back on my back and I took a bunch of roses and I walked up to the door and I rang the doorbell. And I was shaking and freaking out at this point because there was nowhere I wanted to be less than at that house on that morning. And when I rang the doorbell, the door opened and a woman came to the front. And I thought it was Christina Parcell, but I wanted to make sure. And I also wanted to make sure that no one else was home. So I told her that while I was holding the box and the roses, that I had a delivery for Lutina Parcell, her sister. And she told me that Lutina wasn't home. So at this point, I realized that Christina was at the house alone. And I handed her the roses. And I took the revolver out of the box and I pointed it at her. And I told her to be quiet and to go back into the house, which she did. And I followed her into the house and I shut the door. And I was experiencing such anxiety that my body wasn't really doing what I was telling it to do anymore. Like when I realized that I couldn't use the gun, which was unloaded at this point, my plan had been to try to knock her unconscious because I didn't want to cause her or anyone any pain. That wasn't my intention. I just wanted to save Aida and to make sure that no one else who was a bystander would be involved in this or could be endangered in any way. So I tried, while she was holding the roses, to strike her on the head and knock her unconscious. But my body was fighting me because even though I knew who she was and what she was doing and the danger that was putting Aida in, I was still looking at her and I was seeing a sympathetic figure. I was seeing a woman, and I had always been taught never to hurt a woman, to always protect women and children. So when I went to strike her with the gun, my hand didn't really do what I was trying to tell it to. I essentially pulled my strike. It felt like a time I had been cliff jumping with friends. I have a big fear of heights, and there was a 30-foot face that you could jump off and jump into a deep pool of water. And when I would run up to the edge, I would try to get a running start and jump off the edge, and I just couldn't. Like my body would stop me against my will. And I had to try to do this 10 or 15 or 20 times before I could actually get myself to go over the edge. So when I struck her on the head with the pistol, that's what happened. It didn't knock her unconscious, and I hardly struck her at all, to be honest. So I tried again, and the same thing happened. I just couldn't bring myself to strike her. And at this point, she realized that I was hesitating, and she began to try to move herself and to get away and to fight back. And during this period of time, the roses had dropped and the petals and stems had scattered. And as I was hesitating, I realized.
There you go, guys. Explanation of the roses. So I wasn't quite right. He didn't say she was hitting him with the roses, but she was holding them, and then they dropped and they were scattered. So he didn't place them like that, which is what the media wanted to say. You know, it's this ritualistic murder, but whoops, red rum. But it was not, right? They also said her body was posed. He's going to explain that as well. So neither was the roses placed in a certain way, and neither was her body placed in a certain way. That was all the media, stupid media, trying to make things seem like they were just some kind of ritualistic murder kind of thing.
Realized that the situation was quickly getting out of control. And if I didn't pull myself together and act soon, this was all going to end up terribly for Aida, because what was happening to her would never be uncovered.
Just a quick question. You heard testimony that at this time, Christina weighed 163 pounds. How much did you weigh on October the 13th?
160.
Go ahead.
So
She weighed more
I
than him.
realized that I was going to have to somehow force myself to do this at any cost. So I pulled out the knife I was wearing. And even though I knew I wasn't going to be able to strike her with any amount of force, I still tried. So I started striking her, though my strikes were pulled. And I think the knife made contact with her, but it wasn't stopping her, and it wasn't inflicting anything that could be a fatal blow. And she started to fight back. She realized I was hesitating, and it became a struggle. And in this struggle, all I could do was try to overcome this resistance I had towards doing this thing. Even though I knew it was right, I still had this physical and emotional resistance to doing it. So I just kept striking her until finally we fell on the floor. And at this point, I had just tried to take my mind out of it and just try to get through this and finish it as quickly as possible, because I realized that it was only becoming prolonged, and I had to do this in order to save Aida. So I don't remember how many times I struck her. I just remember that when it finished, we were on the ground, and I stopped striking her when she stopped struggling. And at this point, I stood up, and I was still freaking out, and I was in kind of a daze. And I was just trying to pull myself together and figure out what I needed to do to leave the house. And again, I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave anything behind that would connect me to it, because then I believe John would be connected to it, and it would only further put Aida in danger, because I didn't know if Christina Parcell was the only person involved in what was happening to Aida. And she wasn't.
Careful.
So I quickly looked around to make sure I hadn't left a mask or a glove, and I started to pick up the rose petals and realized that I just didn't have time to do that. Again, I was concerned that a neighbor might have heard the commotion and that a neighbor might come by to investigate, and I didn't want that. So I drew the blinds and I moved her body away from the door, which had windows, because I didn't want someone to come to the door and see her. And I put my things back in the backpack, and I looked in a mirror before I left to make sure everything was in order, and I saw that she had scratched my face in the struggle. And of course, I realized that this could leave DNA. So I used the paint thinner to try to clean her hands. And then I changed my mask, and I took off my outer shirt because there was blood on it. And I put it in the backpack. And at this point, I was really worried that someone, that Lutina might come back to the house, or Brad Post might come to the house, or a neighbor might come over. So I was trying to leave the house as quickly as possible. And before I left, when I realized that I had probably left my DNA there, despite my effort not to, I prayed again and just said that I believe that what I've done is the right thing, and I believe that I did it for the right reason. But if it's your will that I be connected to this, then I will turn myself in, and I will own up to what I've done, and I'll take responsibility for it, because I believed that it was the right thing. And then I left. I exited out through the door, and I got back on my bike, and I pedaled my bike back to the truck, and I drove back to the mountain house. And I was still completely freaking out, and it felt entirely surreal. But there is a big difference in how I felt, in that as soon as I left the house, I felt the most enormous wave of relief wash over me, because I knew from that moment on, Aida would be safe. Aida would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Instruction to be quiet.
Okay, you need to stop talking.
There you have it, guys. You look at RA. So yes, the jury didn't take their eyes off them, and then when this happened, I guess their jaws dropped. They were looking at each other. They were looking at the gallery. They were looking everywhere. They were like, "Oh my gosh, what did he just say?" So, guys, the jury now knows what he said. He he told the judge, "I understand you told me not to say anything, but I also put my hand on the Bible and promised to tell the truth." Remember, he felt God said it was okay. So, This on any other trial could be a mistrial, but they're not going there. This was crazy, guys. It was just crazy. I can't even tell you what it was like hearing it real time, and our A's reactions were just just made it all the better. But yeah. So he told the jury, but now the judge said you're not to listen to anything. You're not supposed to use that in your deliberations. Like, they're not going to remember what was said, guys. If you were a jury, you're going to remember that. You can't talk about it because the judge said you can't, but you're not going to forget it. Yeah. I guess the judge's face was red. He was angry. He was really angry. This was bad. This was really bad. He was going to get it. Think about it. Zach had nothing to lose, right? His DNA was still found even after even after cleaning her hands with turpentine. They still were able to get some of it, right? So he was dead to rights right there with the DNA. Okay. And then, there was a video of him in the bike and his bike in his truck, and that's his truck. And there was just a lot of evidence along with all the emails and WhatsApp texts. And, he knew he was done for. So you have to wonder, was this a defense strategy from the beginning? Remember, the defense didn't give an opening statement. So the prosecution had no way of knowing what the defense, what way they were going to lean, right? He had nothing to lose by making the judge angry and saying what he wanted to say in front of the jury. He wanted it known that Christina was essaying her daughter, and he made sure the jury knew it. And not only that, he told them, the state's keeping it from you. Let's just play that part again. Just that part.
And then I changed my mask and I took off my outer shirt because there was blood on it. And I put it in the backpack. And at this point, I was really worried that Lutina might come back to the house, or Brad Post might come to the house, or a neighbor might come over. So I was trying to leave the house as quickly as possible. And before I left, when I realized that I had probably left my DNA there, despite my effort not to, I prayed again and just said that I believe that what I've done is the right thing, and I believe that I did it for the right reason. But if it's your will that I be connected to this, then I will turn myself in and I will own up to what I've done, and I'll take responsibility for it because I believed that it was the right thing. And then I left. I exited out through the door and I got back on my bike and I pedaled my bike back to the truck and I drove back to the mountain house. And I was still completely freaking out and it felt entirely surreal. But there is a big difference in how I felt, in that as soon as I left the house, I felt the most enormous wave of relief wash over me, because I knew from that moment on, Aida would be safe. Aida would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Your Honor, instruction to be quiet.
Okay, you need to stop talking.
So, It was a screaming goat moment. Yes, it was. It really was. I don't think I've ever watched a trial that's been so explosive. I don't know what the word is for this. Very, 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 very strange, right? But guys, getting back to what I said at the beginning, what do you think about his face, his emotions through this trial? Do you see emotion in this man? What do you see? I'm curious. What do you think about him? Are you sympathetic with what he did? Because keep in mind, I do not condone what Christina did by any means, at all. Anyone who abuses a child, I don't condone that. Okay, but I don't believe that there's a reason for murder. I'm gonna get docked one of these days. Red rum. But tell me what you think. I mean, I really want to know your thoughts on what do you see in Zach? Do you see that he's I'm curious. What do you see in him? Nothing. Flatline emotion. That's yeah. Anyone else? Who else? Let me know, guys. I'm curious. I really want to know. Because you know who I'd really like to get opinion of is Dr. John from Hidden True Crime. I'd love for him to give us his analysis of Zachary Hughes. I really would. Shut down? Yeah, Cheryl. I'm concerned with the fact, I mean, he was telling some pretty horrific stuff, right? And you could see he was really imploring the jury to understand what he was saying right at the end there. He felt it was necessary to tell the jury that the state was hiding that from them. And in that, I agree with him. Okay? I agree that the jury should have known about this from the very beginning. I think it was wrong of the judge to keep this out. I think the jury should have had all the information in order to make an informed decision, right? Do you think it is going to affect the jury's decision? Remember, we got cross with this guy tomorrow. We could have another explosive day. I mean, seriously, guys, we could have another pretty wild day. Because he did come back. Obviously, they took a recess and sent the jury out after this. The judge was checked, right? And then they don't show any of the sidebars or anything, right? But it was quite a while. And then they came back and they asked him just a few questions, nothing important, but they were all leading questions where it was yes or no. So I don't know if that's what what the state will do with him tomorrow, if it'll be leading questions. After a lot of thought, we may be looking at the birth of a serial red rummer who can justify his actions. It is a good thing he was caught before I protected another child this way. Exactly. Because, guys, when he was talking, I mean, you could tell he really believed that what he was doing was right. He was like this hero complex, right? So is he going to? It's just what Ginger said. Was he going to be a serial one? Right? There's no doubt in my mind that I think he could do it again. Do I? Because it would be easier the second time around than it was the first time around. I don't think any red rummer, their first time, I don't think it's going to be an easy thing because we're not wired to do that, right? And if he was raised in a home, right from wrong, which seems like he was, but I still think there was something in his childhood with that. I mean, it sounded as though Child Protective Services sued his parents, trying to put his dad in jail, took the kids away. They were in foster care for a little while. So he went through some pretty rough things as a child because of his sister Grace. And I think that had something to do with all of this. Maybe he watched Dexter. Maybe. Maybe. Um, y- you know, I am not a psychologist. I don't know, but isn't it a psychopathic tendency that they have no emotion? He was trying to pretend he had emotion. There were no tears, guys. Made me wonder if he had been doing some white stuff because of his sniffing. No, he won't, Willie. He really won't, can I? I don't think so. I think he'll end up getting hurt badly. He does. He lacks all respect for the state and their authority. He cared little about the judge and his orders. And he did, because anytime he thinks something is, if he's right, and it doesn't matter who's wrong, doesn't matter if it's an authority figure. I mean, he tried to go to the authorities. The guardian ad litem, he sent those nude photos of Christina to, and the website and all that other stuff. He tried to go that route, and nobody did anything. So he felt like he would take matters into his own hands, right? And so he feels that he was right, and doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. And he felt it was wrong for the judge to keep that out, the judge and the state to keep that out. And he was literally, I guess, blaming the state, trying to say that they're the ones that were hiding that from the jury, right? I'm sure they were the ones that made the motion, but the judge is the one that made the decision to keep that out. Yeah. RA, yeah, he was shocked. Maybe it takes a psychopath to recognize another psychopath. Wait a minute, Ginger. What are you saying? I have emotion. Are you talking about me? You mean him with Christina? Is that what you're talking about? But see, there's a difference, because Christina smiles. He doesn't smile. He has no emotion at all to his face. His face always looks like this. He doesn't smile. He doesn't grimace. It's just straight across the line for his mouth. He's always like that. He's always like that. Because I have a picture. Yeah, see, Christina smiles. This might be a little bit of a smile. Let's see his mouth straight across. So, yeah, I mean, I think, let's see. This was him today. See, straight across. I took a screenshot of him in court today. So, yeah, straight across. You had me worried there for a minute, Ginger, because I was the one that's saying he might be a psychopath. So, the way he described a psychopath, I gotcha. Yeah. Yes, and yeah, he did describe it, right? And so, it must have been this morning, I think, when he was talking about his sister, right? So, yeah. Um, what was he like when he played the piano? Okay, let me see if I can find it, and I can show it. I can't play the sound, but I could show you him playing. I think there's so much of him in this trial now that trying to get to his YouTube channel there it is. Okay. So let's show this tab. So this is him. He's got 5 videos, guys. I'll play this one, but I'm going to turn off the sound just so you can see if he shows any kind of an emotion. We won't play the whole thing, but he almost looks like he's frowning. I'm sorry, guys. I can't play the music because I get docked. But I encourage you, go there. I will put his stream in chat so you can go listen to his music. He is really good. He's really good. Very talented, which is really a shame if you think about it. But I don't see any emotion, do you? Same face. Yeah. How can he play so well and not have any emotion? Yes. Very serious dude, likes to have full control. No doubt about it. He does raise his eyebrows, but his facial expression doesn't change. It's really, oh, look at that face on that statue. Sorry, guys. It looks like him. So yes, if you want to hear his music, go over. He plays a Beethoven birthday, and it's really kind of cool. It's really kind of cool. Um, but So, yeah, then he stated that the state was keeping the sexual abuse from the jury. Of course, the court was shut down for quite a while. He came back, answered a few questions. The judge did sentence him to 6 months in jail for contempt for doing that. When you're looking at life, I don't think 6 months matters, but okay. And then the jury was sent home for the day. The lawyers will be back in court tomorrow at 9:30, and the jury is not coming back until 10:30. Trial to start, and I think it'll be cross-examination of Zach by the state. So you only seen him smile once. I haven't seen him at all. You need to find that, and let's so we can say we've seen Zach smile once. Yeah, very stiff, very emotionless. But he doesn't play like that. I wish I could play it, but I can't. Yeah. Even if it's on a YouTube, because the music copyright stuff. I mean, if I pay, I could play it, but I'm not going to pay, not for him. Not for him. Because he gets the proceeds, so no, not for him. Not happening. But yeah, I mean, I'm amazed that he plays so well with such feeling, but yet he doesn't show that feeling on his face. How does that work? Right? I guess the real test would be, I'm not one into classical music. I think he plays it really well, but I'm not a connoisseur of it. I love listening to it, but I'm not a connoisseur, so I don't know. I guess I can't tell if there's emotion in that he's playing, or if it's just precise, right? I guess the real thing would be is if he played a song that I was more familiar with, that had feeling, that I could, maybe like a love song or something, that I could tell if he was putting the emotion into the song. But for me to try to judge classical music, I guess not. But I will say I think he plays very, very well. Obviously, he's a graduate of Juilliard, full scholarship guys. Very intelligent young man, very talented, and but you gotta wonder, why did he have problems with authority? And the reason I ask that is because, as talented as he is, why isn't he playing for some big orchestra somewhere? Versus he was going to go on, was it a cruise trip to play piano? And he was busking in the streets and stuff like that. I mean, I know he did play some private things, and he did his Beethoven 32 sonatas thing, and that was all paid for. But yeah, to me, wouldn't your goal be to be in some orchestra or playing on your own venue? I mean, I don't know, but that's all gone now, right? No matter what his goals might have been, his life is over. When you play solo, you have all control. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And you don't have the control when you're in an orchestra. And I do see that. He's a very controlling young man. Very controlling. So much so, if things don't go his way, what does he do? Scary. Scary, scary. But that's all I had for today, guys. My grannyism today is when the truth emerges, it can't be ignored, nor will it wait. I was thinking about Zachary when I saw this. I was like, whoa, that is so true. I mean, he had to tell the truth. He wasn't going to let it be ignored. He was not waiting. He was just going to tell the truth. He put his hand in his Bible. He told the judge that, and he had to tell the truth no matter what. Is that weird, guys? And seriously, this was written by Barbara Delinsky. I don't know who that is, but that's a quote that's out there, and it fit for today. How many of my grannyisms do that? It's just kind of weird. I think that was enough, Granny. What do you mean? Oh. You mean of what happened? That was enough? If he grew up in chaos and confusion, that might explain some of his behaviors. Yeah. He started out his testimony by saying he had a very good childhood, but when he started talking about grace, I didn't feel that so more, because then when he started talking about how DSS were trying to have his dad put in jail and they put them in foster home for a little bit, I don't think it was very long, but all of a sudden it didn't seem like things were so hunky-dory anymore, right? And the way that he described her was very psychopathic, like Ginger said. Yeah, to the tune of she was trying to groom her younger siblings to do things so that she wouldn't get in trouble for it anymore. And just uh, weird stuff. He said she lied so well it was hard to tell if she was telling the truth. Just really different things, right? And so it sounded like it caused a lot of chaos and confusion in their home even before DSS got involved, right? Grace was finally taken from their home, by the way, which probably wasn't a bad thing, right? From the sounds of it, for everybody involved. But I hate to think that, obviously it affected Zach, and he was older than her. He had another brother, I believe, that was his, full sibling. And then there were 4 others that had been adopted besides Grace. And they were all siblings of Grace. So you got to wonder how those 4 siblings and even Zach's younger brother fared through all that. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I think he learned some of her behaviors. Maybe he doesn't even realize that. That's probably possible. I think that people can see things in others quicker than they can see things in themselves, right? I mean, it makes it very hard, but I think that I think that he was more affected by his childhood than he likes to say, and by Grace in particular. But yeah, very interesting interesting trial. I was holding my breath all day today, wondering if we were going to have an issue with mistrial. You just never knew what was going to happen. And I think I'm going to feel the same way tomorrow. If he's still on the stand, it's going to be very kind of, because guys, I do not want a mistrial. That means we have to go through this all over again. And I don't think I can watch it again. Seriously. But I guess I probably would, because at that point I'd really want to see him convicted for what he's done, because guys, he planned it. He even stated how he planned it. Right? I mean, there's no denying it. But anyway, that's really all I had for today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for giving and sharing your opinions with me. I appreciate that. I just like to know if I'm thinking correctly, or if I could be way off base, right? Because sometimes you never know, I've seen in, recovery addicts chat, there were people who, even after everything that he explained that he did, still had sympathy towards Zach. And I'm sorry, I don't. I just don't. I think that he should be punished to the full extent of the law. Thank you, K9. I appreciate you. So thank you guys, Cheryl, everybody, for coming in, and for Melissa for talking and sharing everything. Ginger. So I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching another episode of Granny's Crime Busters. We really appreciate each and every one of you. Don't forget to subscribe and like and even share the content. You can follow us on any of our other social media platforms at YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We really appreciate you guys, and you can also email us at granniescrimebusters@gmail.com. Thank you so much, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.